She gave birth to twins at home, and the twin pregnancy was almost 42 weeks. All right, ladies, it is so, oh my gosh. Okay, so this topic, I know I may step on some toes. I don't mean to, but we got to talk about the facts. And this social media post has basically stirred a lot of conversation and have a lot of people having daydreams and fantasies about home births. So we're going to talk about it today because congratulations to the celebrity that gave birth. And I do believe, I think another celebrity was her doula. Don't quote me on that, but I believe she was. She's a famous celebrity doula. You'd be surprised what people do when they're not selling millions of records. But the controversy about this was that this particular celebrity had said that she gave birth to twins at home, and the twin pregnancy was almost 42 weeks. So essentially 41-week twins at home. So a lot of women in the comments were kind of saying, wow, that's dope. There were a lot of people congratulating her, but a lot of people who were a little bit concerned about it. So we're going to talk about it today. And look at these two. The fashionistas are on the couch. Okay. Come on. Our national certified counselor, Janae Mitchell. Thank you for joining us again on the virtual couch, and also mom of a precious daughter. Okay. So I really want to hear what you have to say. And of course, come on, Kendra. Kendra Sims is back with us, our licensed clinical social worker who works with the kids in need. We're so happy to have you back on the couch with us, Kendra. So you ladies, I'm sure, have read the post. First, I want to know, what was your first thought?
Well, initially, my first thought, I'm just so grateful that that the babies came out, for one. And just thinking about there's a lot of Black women who don't make it through, whether they're giving a home birth or in a hospital. So really my first thought is just thank God that this is this type of post and not another one.
Listen, can we put a pin in that? We're gonna have to come back to that part. There was a lot in that statement. There's a lot in that statement. And as a mom, also, Janae, like, what was your first thought when you read this post?
Yeah, similar to Kendra, like the song "Millions Didn't Make It" came to mind. And so I didn't even realize that she was pregnant with twins. So I was really like thankful that she made it and they made it and all healthy, but also that like she was super active. She was able to she was in good health for most of that pregnancy. And like I said, I didn't even realize that she was pregnant with twins. So I was truly at awe of woman femininity or womanhood, and the ability to like be able to do such great things like with our bodies.
I mean, that's incredible though. It's true to have twins as a home birth, and this was her second home birth, I believe. So she had been through this experience before, and I guess from that great experience, she wanted to do it again. And I think she documented, I want to make sure I'm remembering correctly, 7 hours. Yeah. So it was a 7-hour process for her, which is actually not bad at all. You know, a lot of times women are in labor for way longer than that, especially 36. See, talking about the power of women. Talking about that power. Okay. 36 hours. 36 hours.
36 hours.
Yeah, that first child, man. That first child.
She been on her own time since she got here.
That's how first kids do. That's how the firstborn, that's how they do. And I think the other part that astonished a lot of people, I'm with you, Janae. I didn't know that she was pregnant with twins. I think that was kind of hush. I don't know that anyone knew that she was pregnant with twins, because I don't remember seeing anyone in comments saying, oh, hey, yeah, you gave birth to the twins. That's great. I think everyone was kind of like, what? Wait, twins? And I know I saw her in concert. Okay. I
Big
definitely
pregnant.
saw her in concert, very, very pregnant. So she was definitely working hard while she was pregnant with these twins and carried beautifully because, like you said, no one even guessed or suspected that she was pregnant with multiples, or hopefully no one, even if they suspected, would even ask nowadays. I'm hoping we are past that point, right? But the fact that it was twins and then she carried up until 41 weeks is actually pretty remarkable in of itself too. Most twins do make it to full term, but a lot of them won't necessarily go past their due dates. So that I think also astonished most people. And she said nearly, and I think what was interesting was that she said almost 42 weeks. And a lot of people interpreted that as 42 weeks. I was like, almost, people, almost. Because we do know obstetrically that we don't typically advise women to go past 2 weeks after their due date because of all the increased risks that are associated with it, from excessively large babies, which then can lead to birth injuries or birth complications, to in stillbirth, the word we don't like to say, but stillbirth does increase. Cord accidents happen as they get further past their due date, as well as decreased fluid. And so we try to not or to recommend and counsel women to not go past 42 weeks. So I don't want people to take away from that she went to 42 weeks. She went to 41 weeks, which is perfectly fine, especially if the babies are doing very well. So I think what kind of struck me when I read a lot of the comments is that now I think I'm noticing a trend that a lot of people just want to do home births, and understandably so. I mean, as Kendra mentioned, we have this statistic that's out there's this leering statistic that's out there that puts Black women 3 times more likely to die as a result of pregnancy-related complications from the time of pregnancy all the way through a year after pregnancy. And so I think, and it hasn't gotten better. So even the stats during the pandemic, after this statistic came out, the stats were even slightly worse. And so I think a lot of women are concerned about the hospital-based births and just being pregnant in the system of the healthcare system in the US altogether. What's interesting is that there has been a trend of women wanting to do home births. And at the same time, there are some statistics that people aren't really paying attention to also. So on the other hand, there was and I want to say the study came out in 2020. Don't quote me on that. I try to put the actual date and reference in the content of this video. But there was a study that was done on the East Coast, a very large hospital system on the East Coast, that actually showed that neonatal deaths and neonatal seizures were a little bit higher in the home births. So one of the question is, should people be fantasizing about home births? Is that the answer? Is that where we are now? What are your thoughts about that?
I honestly feel like I feel like in a lot of subjects, people should, mind their own uterus. Meaning,
I love that.
honestly, truly meaning you have to do what's best for you. And it may be, the whole notion of a home birth may be something that no one ever considered, and say, let me look into that. Do your own research. And people have all sorts of feelings about, should it be in a hospital? Should it be at home?
Mm-hmm.
Should I get an epidural? Like, all of the questions that even I hear with the clients that I work with, or my interns, and, and everybody's like, everybody has their list of questions, but it brings up, once you answer one question, it brings up some more. So I feel like people should, if they're going to ruminate or just think on something as it relates to what they're going to do with their body, they look at all factors, research, ask the questions, then ask somebody else those same questions. One of my close friends, she actually just gave birth to a healthy little boy.
Oh, congratulations to your friend. That's awesome. So
And
we have is it a January baby?
it's not a junior. He was born in the winter.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Last
Winter
year.
baby. Okay.
Yeah. So and so, but I remember us talking, and she was like, she had mentioned like the birthing center where she was gonna give birth at, because she was like, I wanted to do, home birth, but it wasn't like her house. It wouldn't have worked. And and so like I'm just like follow up. I'm like, she was like, I want you guys to be present. I'm like, oh girl, wait a minute. But I was like, I've I was like, okay, just keep me
You're
posted.
like, we're getting real close with this friendship.
Keep me posted. I was like, I done seen a lot of stuff I ain't want to see. But I think, okay, cool. And a few weeks, and so I said, well, send me I'm a researcher. So if you send me something, I'm gonna look it up. I want to know. Give me all the information. And a few weeks went by, and I've just followed up, just checking in on her, like, how are you? How's the baby? How you're, because you go and tell the doctor every 20 minutes, feels like, when people are about to give birth. And so I was like, oh, so are we still doing? I'm like, because I'm going now. So I'm like, are we still doing the homework? And she was like, no. And she mentioned that she was going to give birth at a hospital in Los Angeles. And so we talked about sort of her, a few of her reasons why just switching. And and for her, after doing, and she's a researcher, and she is like super like, Black women need to advocate for themselves, like, for themselves in the hospital, and so much stuff she already had to advocate for. And she said for her, one of the key turning factors is the what if. Once my son, once he comes out of the birth canal, I don't know what happens after that. In terms of what if he needs this, and we are, X amount of miles away from the nearest place, even if they have all the people now. That's why I say you have to do what's best for everybody. Like, I have cousins, not to just ramble, but I'm like, one of my cousins, she gave birth to my cousin in a car, and he's fine. Like,
Wow. See, women are superheroes.
Superhero. So I just like, you have to do, but all of her other births were at a hospital. So it just, and the kids are also fine. So you just have to do what's best for your body and your circumstances. And there are plenty of people giving birth in a hospital. There are plenty of people who are not. And some are making it, some aren't making it. So there's a risk either way, because you're bringing people into the world. So all of it is risky, but do what's best for your own uterus.
Right. And to your point, Kendra, there are lots of people giving births now at home as well. The number has increased by 13% between 2020 to 2021. 13%, that's a huge jump. We don't usually see such large increases. So it's as of 2021, it's up to over 51,000 home births. So that's a lot of home births, and that's per the CDC. What were you thinking about it, Janae?
I think, and just like in doing research and looking at what you just said, I think like COVID played a huge factor in the increase in women kind of making the choice to shift back home. I think that it, like when you think about it, before 1900, like people was giving birth at home, like that was the norm, right? And then over the years, like my belief and what stat says, like this kind of male dominant doctor versus midwife kind of thing happened, and legislation followed with like, it's best to do it in a hospital, right? And I agree with Kendra that at the end of the day, whatever we as women choose, we no birth fits all, or no woman is the same. And so you have to, it's so many factors. It's my pressure, my weight, what I'm eating, how big my baby, it's all of those things that really kind of impact it as well. So I just think the important thing is to be well informed, and to have people that can come alongside you and advocate. I really truly think that's the biggest key, is to just kind of and plan. You plan to fail. You plan to fail to plan. You plan to fail. So it's just like, I think just being able to have a plan and have a, like, if this go wrong, have a plan about that too.
Right.
It's just important. I know for me, like I gave birth during the pandemic, and I got a doula. Yeah, like Nima was born in August of 2020.
I just remembered how old you said she was. Yeah.
I got pregnant in like December of 2021. And so like it was right before like COVID happened. So I was a first time mom, like petrified. Like I had COVID when she was in utero. So there was a lot. I started out, and I guess it's interesting, and why I think when you sent out the list, this one really kind of tugged them, like, I guess my heart, because I started out the process very much just doing what the norm was, which is like, okay, I'm gonna go to the hospital and make a doctor's appointment. And then everything kind of shifted virtual. I had COVID, like I said, and like, I'm like, I need to see somebody. Like, I need these questions answered. And we just sitting on the camera like this, like, how you doing? You okay? Like, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I feel okay, but like, I need to be checked. And
yeah, I need you
they
to
were
touch
like
me.
sending out,
Right.
they were sending
Somebody
out
should
like
rub on my belly. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, like,
touch my skin.
something, you know, but I think what I learned through that process is your body knows, right? In a lot of ways. So I truly went most of my pregnancy without in-person checks. And I just did what felt right for me. I tried to ensure that I was drinking water. I did research and, you know, and so I think I set out one way, and before it was all over, I kind of was like, I'm gonna get a doula, and I don't want to go to the hospital during COVID. Like, I'm gonna do this at home. And so I planned to have a home birth. I had initially planned to do a water birth. And that was kind of the route that I took. And it was more so about just having a plan, like I said, and planning to do it at home. And one of the things that my doula asked when we first started kind of meeting was like, what is the last straw for you? What is the thing that if it happens, we need to go to the hospital, right?
That's
because like, if I'm in distress and I can't really articulate that, then she needs to at least know, and my husband needs to know, like, what's that thing, right? So just having the supports, I you know, like, it where you do it is I think you have to make that choice for yourself, but just be well informed and trust yourself. I think ultimately through the process.
Yeah, trust yourself to make the right decision for yourself, right? I like that. And I like the fact that you mentioned that you sought out a doula. So a lot of people are just like, I have a lot of patients who still don't know what a doula is. How did you find out about doulas? Were you already aware about doulas? I know you're in the medical profession or the clinical profession, but were you aware of doulas before the pandemic and before that particular era?
I was aware of them, but I think for so long I wasn't quite clear on the difference between midwife and doula. And so that was one thing that I kind of like had to learn more about. And I think ultimately for me, in order, if and when I have another child, I want to do it at home again. But I said to myself, like, I want to also have a midwife. So I think in my process of learning what their different roles are, a doula is more so doctors and like midwives, they care about the patient, but like the most like important hierarchy is like ensuring that the baby gets here safely. Doulas are more specifically like a direct aid advocate for the mom and the baby, of course, but like to make sure that like nothing is being done that is unjust. And in the event that I am in distress, there is someone else who knows my desires, my wishes, what I'm not about to let happen when I need to do X, Y, and Z. And so I think that it's a beautiful marriage to have both of those pieces. And my own experience, my own belief.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that's an ongoing confusion, is what's the difference between, and I would say I've also seen in the comments that people are confused even about doula versus OBs. So there is ongoing confusion about the roles of all three. If I had to categorize them, I like how you said it, the OB and the midwives are clinicians. So trained to care for you medically, take care of your blood pressure issues, your diabetes, and do the technicality of the delivery. The actual delivery is the responsibility of the midwife or an OB, depending on what you choose. For a doula, as you mentioned, is more for emotional support and advocacy. So doulas are not clinicians, they're not clinically trained, but they're excellent in being support, in being a strong part of your village. And this particular celebrity, I remember that she said also that the dad, which I think is so cool,
doula dads.
The dads are becoming doulas. Like, hello, dads, where have y'all been?
My husband just knew he was my doula. Like, you couldn't have told him He was like,
That's what
I'm
I'm
the kill it. Like,
talking
I'm the
about.
best doula in the
And
world, bro.
he still is.
It was and is.
I think that is by far the direction
Yeah.
for women who do have that option to have
Yeah.
a partner or the partner involved in the childbirth. I do think it's a phenomenal idea to have the dad or the partner trained to become the doula, or to at least be very familiar and co-working with a doula. I think that's the dopest setup ever. Like, I'm 100% for that. So I like that combination. I like the fact that you said everyone have their own roles. So, midwife can take care of a low risk, and depending on the level of the midwife, some midwives can also take care of a little bit of a higher risk patient. But definitely the highest risk patients with medical complications is going to be with your OB for the obvious reasons. And oftentimes not just an OB, some pregnancies require multiple people involved. Like, sometimes at birth, you may have a cardiologist available, a pulmonologist available, depending on what's going on with the woman. One of the things I like that you guys said is basically kind of choose what's good, what's right for you. Part of the thing, and I totally understand why women are distrustful of the healthcare system. I mean, do we need to go through the whole list? I think by now we're all kind of pretty well informed about all the things that's going on. Even outside of women's health, there's so many disparities in the healthcare system that have to be worked on, and is probably going to take beyond it's probably going to take beyond our generation to fix a lot of those issues, right? Because you're talking about racism. It's going to take generations to fix racism, because that's the underlying cause of it. But one of the things, as people are starting to really consider home births, oftentimes I'll get the message or see the messaging, we want to go back to how our ancestors were. We want to be like our ancestors, and our ancestors gave birth, at home with traditional midwives. And I actually had the great opportunity to meet some traditional midwives in Kenya specifically, when I traveled to Kenya. So I know how dope they are. Okay. However, the thing that we have to consider is, are we our ancestors? Right? So we've crossed over the Atlantic, and there was more than a physical transition, or a symbolic transition. There was an actual physical transition. We then endured slavery and all the consequences and detrimental effects of slavery and ongoing racism that impacts our lives on different aspects, from our environmental exposure to the food we eat, which then causes us to endure more medical conditions than those who are not our race, right? And so I think one thing that people do have to realize is, how similar are you to your ancestors? Like, our ancestors, like, they were climbing up trees, they were swinging over things, jumping things, fighting battles, like for real fight. Okay. So our ancestors had and when I say ancestors, I'm talking about ancestors on the other side of the Atlantic, not this side of the Atlantic. And clearly our ancestors on this side of the Atlantic had an incredible amount of endurance and strength because of a lot of the physical labor that they did as well, even though they were impacted by, infectious diseases and things that were out of their control. But really making some context as to what we mean when we say, I want to be like my ancestors. I want to be treated like my ancestors. Really identifying, are we as healthy as our ancestors? We have high rates of diabetes, high rates of hypertensive disorders. Our weight issues are more common in our community. We have all these end stage heart disease is more common. We have all these end stage issues, that takes us away from what our ancestors used to be. And so we going into the circumstance is not the same as our ancestors going into the same circumstances. We know that Americans are less physically fit. We know this by far. The numbers have shown us that we don't all, to our 150 minutes per week, we don't all eat healthy. And even when we try to be healthy, we still have to deal with the discrepancies in our communities. So just really taking that into context. And I know sometimes that's hard to take into context, especially when you have already been traumatized by the system. So a lot of women who were sharing their experiences were sharing traumatic experiences. So they can relate to the numbers. It's more than a statistic for them. It's actually their personal experiences. And so the statistics talk about the mortality rate, but there's still a morbidity rate. Like, people who survived but have some form of trauma, right? Those who had emergency C-sections, complications, they're still living with their trauma. And so I think that group in particular are really seeking, they're kind of like, well, what do I got to lose? What really do I have to lose? Right? Like, I tried that and this was my outcome, and I'm still recovering emotionally from that experience. So I might as well try the home birth, if nothing else. And there are people who are having great experiences. And one of the things people sometimes will quote is like other countries. Like, what about Scandinavia? What about, that country over there? They have amazing numbers of home births, and they do, but their health system are different, and their health outcomes are different. Like, okay, Americans, we're not really that healthy. And so when we compare ourselves to other countries, we also have to compare not just that particular outcome, but how is their overall health? And so people ask, like, why are we seeing those higher numbers of neonatal complications in home births, regardless of the experience of the midwife? And that was one thing that was significant in the article, was that it wasn't like the younger the midwife or the less experienced the midwife, the same, they saw the outcomes across the board. And it's basically because I think we're still trying to figure out who's appropriate for a home birth. I think we're still trying to figure out who is the best candidate for a home birth. Because I think for us as clinicians, if you can do a home birth safely, by all means, especially the fact that you're in, I think there's a big deal about being in your own environment at home, and the comfort of that, the familiarity of that, I think is a big deal. So I definitely am a fan for it. What do you think some women should think about when they are considering home births as an option? Anything that they should think about or prepare? I like you said something like what if, like the what if, to answer what if. Anything else that you consider?
Yeah, I think having a birthing like just a plan. So, I understand that like doulas cost money, and everybody's experience is different. So like some women may not be able to get a doula because we're kind of just now in the place of fighting to try to get that kind of stuff covered through insurance, right? So
Yes.
Even if you cannot maybe like get a doula or get a midwife, I think, you can go online and kind of just print out just like a plan. And so I think just kind of doing your own research and making a plan for yourself, that even if you're going to stick with an OB in a hospital, that you're able to kind of just know, like, this is what I have. And even if it's my partner or if a family member that's going to be with me through the process, ensure that they are also very understanding. They are they know your plan as well, to ensure that like they can be an advocate, in some way, like a doula to you as well. I think like that's the other like big thing, truly. And I think like you brought up a good point about like us not being our ancestors, and this may step on some toes, but like
sometimes we just
think, look at you, like, girl, let me get off this camera. Like, I think about my own, like you were talking about how like some things are traumatic, and I think we live in a world, and it's not just with like maternal matters or perinatal matters, but I find it in life where you have like, in us as a race, we're super like black or white, and we stick to that, and like we judge each other if we feel like it's important to have some of both, right? And so I won't say any names, but like, and I loved my process with my doula, but it was also very like insightful, certain things that I saw, right? And she now has 2 children and like gave birth at home, like, but she lives a very different type of lifestyle, right? And I acknowledge that. But what I found is like, when I got to the point through my pregnancy, after like 24 hours of laboring at home, I literally was exhausted. Like my husband was petrified at this point, and I generally did not think I could do it without at least being able to be checked. So, but like in my head, I was like, she gonna think I'm a sucker. Like she gonna think I'm like weak, like if I tell her I want to go, like this is what I was like thinking. And so like I probably fought longer, wanting, I guess, wanting to prove.
That's
wanting
no,
to
you're
prove
you're
that, like,
sparking a thought in my head. That's an interesting point. I never thought about the pressures of feeling like you have
even on the other side.
yes.
Yeah. And so like we went to the hospital, and that was traumatic because I lived about a half an hour away from where the hospital was because we moved during my pregnancy. And so like getting there, I had to wait to get checked. They had to COVID test me. And so by the time like they were able to check, my pressure was like 160 something. And my midwife was just like, I know we plan to like do this naturally, but I think, you know, you may need to like, we might have to give you some help, whatever. And I cried. And so at that moment, I'm like going through all these thoughts because I'm like, I kind of in some way felt my doula came, but I felt from that moment on like a disconnect with her. And I was just like, damn, like that's deep, right? And so I, since that time, like I've spent a lot of time reflecting on it, and even in my own like work as a therapist, I've started to really move toward. I'm not saying I want to be a doula, but I am saying that like I want to be able to show like I think in my head like an everyday doula, where it's just like I am truly gonna be okay. It's not about me, right? So I just want to support my client, my mom, so that she knows that like she's gonna be taken care of. And even if that means we got to end up going to the hospital, as long as her baby get here safely and she alive too, that's what's important. And I think like in society, we have just, it's just like we've jumped on like the home birthing thing, but at the like expense of like attacking people if they end up having to go to the hospital, or if they opt to do the hospital altogether. And I'm just like, that we missing it. Like we still missing it, right?
Oh, that's such a
right. I'm gonna get off my soapbox.
No, that was a good. I want you to stay there. That because that's a point that you're right, stepping on some toes with that, but I think it's a truth that needs to be said. You're so right about that unsaid pressure to be a part of that trend or that option, and not feeling, and the goal is not really for people to feel pressured one way or the other. It's for people to feel free to make the right choice for themselves. It's really about the freedom, and especially for a ethnic group that doesn't really have a lot of freedoms, it feels good to feel like something is in your control, right? Even though we all know the babies are really the determining factor. They're really in control. But in general, in terms of the decision making, it feels, I think there's a freeing aspect of it to feel like, oh, I'm in control to make this decision. Oh, you said so many things that I want to touch on that I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so good. But to your point also is really for women to feel like they have, because I do feel that there's a little bit of a trend to push women in that direction. And it's not really about that. It's about women, again, having that freedom and having the information. So, sometimes I see one-sided information on both ends, right? I see the statistic information on one end, and I see the, butterflies and starlights on the other end. And like both sides are not giving women the full story. And it's really about women having the full story that's out there. And granted, some statistics you have to be able to, this is why we're here, to dissect the information, because some stats may not necessarily include us, it may not have necessarily included us in our outcome, or we may have things like the VBAC calculator, which has been very controversial, that has an inherent bias in it against us having vaginal births after prior C-section for Black women. So that being said, I think you still need a resource like Healthy Bub Club to be able to help you dissect through all these information. Does that apply to me? Does not apply to me? And it's about having reliable platforms where you feel like you can get this unbiased information. And I think that's where we're lacking. I think we're getting both sides. And there was another point you brought, you maybe stirred. So my approach with patients is assessing the risk and the benefits of both options. And the majority of my patients do a hybrid model. So they will do their early labor at home. And once they get into the more active phase of labor, where their sugars may have to be monitored more closely, or their blood pressures have to be monitored more closely, they go into the hospital for that part. And I've gotten such great feedback about that, because they get the sort of duality of the experience. They get the home births, and they get to, we do birthing plans, we go to comfort measures, like, because a lot of women will say, What were you gonna say, Kendra?
Can I just tap
Yeah.
me? You guys know I'm silly. And as soon as you started saying that, I was just like, oh, I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. Like, and I'm taking in all of the information because
Uh-huh.
so I've never given birth. I walked by a few people giving birth. I know a lot of
That's
pregnant
important to your village. You're part of the village.
most definitely part of the village. But I will be honest,
Uh-huh.
I've often said that giving birth is something that frightens me.
Mm.
The whole process, I was like, I've experienced a lot of medical challenges for a while, and so just the thought of being in more pain than I'm already in on a
Mhm.
on a consistent basis with all of the trauma and the medications and the treatments, et cetera, et cetera. And so hearing and might even be curious about doing a home birth, but I'm like, with just thinking about all of all of my what ifs due to genetics and what have you. um,
Uh-huh.
I never even considered a hybrid model. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that was an option.
And most
So
people don't
yeah,
get
I
it.
never, it's not something that comes up in conversation. It's
Mhm.
you have to choose if you do this, if you do that. And so something that is just is just tapping on my head in terms of having an advocate and things like that. When I think about, I work, for those that aren't aware, I work with specialized placement for youth in foster care.
Mhm.
And so I work with my age group that I specialize in, I guess you could say, are teenagers up until 21, and so, or
Mhm.
sometimes after, because never nobody ever leaves. So and I just had a one of our kids, she just gave birth, a healthy son. He's cute.
Oh,
He has an Audi. He's adorable.
is that how yeah, I love it. I love it.
I saw a video before this started, and I'm just, and listening to this conversation, I said, you know what, it makes me almost scared for my youth in care, um, in a sense, to give birth in a hospital.
Mhm.
Not necessarily for the sake of, like, like, oh, will they get, this, that, and the third, but I'm like, there's no one for the most part in the room in their life, let alone having someone in a hospital.
Mhm.
So and so for some of us, like one of our supervisors, she's a doula. So she's like, we need to get such and such and such and such needs this. They need this. I
Mhm.
can't, so she's like, and I just love that. And I'm like, help her, help me, help us. But it makes me think about, what happens when people don't have just advocates in their life, let
Mhm.
alone for this, period of,
This prenatal
realizing
period.
that we're, yeah, prenatal and all, up until the baby is delivered. And so, or and aftercare, depending on what the
Yeah.
needs are and how
Mhm.
long that takes too. And so it just makes me think of how necessary it is to have organizations like the Healthy Bum Club, because I'm just like, I don't know nothing, but if and so when I do need to know.
Mhm.
And so it just makes me become more like, I feel like I need to be just more in tune with
Mhm.
the needs that, as a woman, that I have.
Mhm. Mhm.
um and then, and because I'm a social worker, that's literally the helping profession.
Mhm.
My job is to
To the
advocate
T,
forever.
baby.
you know
To the T.
listen. And so I'm over here like, well, you don't know if you want to be a doula or not, Janae. But I'm like, by the time I conceive, you probably will be 3 doulas. I might need you and your husband.
I like
You
coming.
got
I
But
like
you
it's
coming.
got
so it's so necessary, like you said,
Mhm.
to have that village. But it's also necessary to realize that sometimes, as as we're talking about it, we are, we have to. It's a lot of it is personal, and a lot of it is community. A lot of it's
Yes.
government and policy, and a lot of it is just, I need to take a minute and consider something else. So for people who
Mhm.
are, you know hammering down on one way or the highway,
Mhm.
consider, what is it, take a mile in someone else's shoes, or take a month
Mhm.
in somebody else's pregnancy, and think
Mhm.
about, for, like I just mentioned earlier, like, think about that kid who does not have family, who
Right.
doesn't have
Yeah.
really friends, really may or may
Mhm.
not know who the father is, due to all of the sorts of trauma, may not even have anything to do with
Mhm.
promiscuity or anything like that.
Right.
For all of the people that, given, what about this, and she should have, you don't know.
Yep.
But it makes me say, like, well, maybe under the, under the right, whatever those loose right circumstances are, maybe there is space for this subject in the foster care realm, because people don't know. You don't know until it's brought to the table.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling like that's a tug towards a conversation that, I need to bring somewhere with you all.
Yeah.
Because that's another resource. I love a resource. But it's so because I'm just thinking, I'm like, and she, I'm just thinking about all of the kids that I've seen over the years give birth, and I'm just like, I can't even imagine.
Right.
And like, I got a village, this is very wise, and they concerned about if I get a paper cut. But then I have people who no one comes to see them, other than the people that are paid to.
Yeah.
So it makes me think about how important and how much of a gap this is. Like, it's a gap for those who feel like you said, Janae, like, got to push forward, and I feel like I just got to give birth because I got to be super mom because they super mom.
That's superwoman syndrome, baby.
And then it's like, well, actually, I just want to be a mom. I can't be a super mom.
Can I just be?
Yeah, can I just be? No, that's such a great point, because I remember for this particular celebrity that kind of spawned this conversation, she had a list of people, like it was the dad, the professional doula, the elders, a birth team, she said, which did not expand who was in the team. Yeah. So it's all about the fine lines. Like, people are not reading the fine lines. They're like, I want to do that. But do you have a birth team? Like, most people don't have a birth team in their house, in addition to the doula and the dad. And mind you, a professional doula that's been doing this for a long time. And I think there was grandparents there and the elders. Like, you're right. To your point, Kendra, like, having that support in that village is so critical to the success of home births, are the success of hospital births. So you're right. I can't even imagine people who just don't have that kind of support at all, or don't have any support. Yeah. Whew, that being said, oh my gosh, there's so much to think about with this, but I'm so glad that we're starting to have really these conversations, to both your points, that we're really starting to educate women about their options. And I really hope that we get to the point that we can all approach birth as a team, whether it's, it's the parents, the support system that comes with the parents, whether it's a doula or family members, because sometimes some patients will use their family members as their doula, like untrained doula, like traditional, like, and the midwife and the doctor, having a conversation together and coming together as a team and coming up with a plan that works for that patient. I think a lot of times patients just don't feel comfortable talking to doctors, and that's a problem. And that's something we have to do better with, and break down those communication barriers so that people feel comfortable sharing their visions and sharing their hopes and their dreams, even if it's something we won't choose. Like, our care shouldn't come from our personal preferences. It comes from designing the care that is specific to that patient. Because I have different belief systems than my patients. I have different history than my patient. I have a medical history that's different from my patients. I have a mindset and perspective on life that's different from my patients. So we should not be placing even though sometimes patients will say things and be like, oh, we really gonna do that, because of all the medical information and the risk and ultimately the fears we have, right? Because we all want patients to have these great healthy outcomes. But sometimes you have to release that control that we all seem to want to have, and to allow the patient to make decisions, even when we feel like, man, I don't know if I would do that. It's up to the patient. Our role is really to inform the patient and give them the information so that they can then make the best decision for them and their family. And as long as we are able to confirm that they understand the risk and the benefits of all options, then our job is done. And the unfortunate part, which we haven't talked about, is the litigious, yeah. It's the litigious side of society, which I think
I can't help you with that word.
I mean, there's so many lawsuits. Our practice is one of the highest rate of lawsuits in all of in all specialties. And I think a lot of times, just in general, the profession has been pushed in a certain direction because there's a fear of being sued. There's a fear of having to be in a lawsuit. So I think in general, the profession has been what's the word, kind of like shaped and molded by the legal system. And I think if we had not have that aspect of it, then I think a lot of doctors would be a lot more open, a lot more freeing to consider various options. But I think a lot of doctors are kind of like, I don't want to be sued. I don't want to lose my license. I've worked on that. I don't want to. And ultimately, you don't want your patients to have bad outcomes. We all go into medicine because we want to help patients. We don't get tortured for years to not want the best for the patient. Let's not count those years. We ultimately want the best for our patients, and we wish that these other forces weren't as strong as they are, but they are. So that being said, thank you, ladies, for joining on this amazing conversation once again. I mean, you guys got my wheels turning now.
You got some work to do. You got homework.
Yeah, I'm really going to focus on, because I do have some foster patients and patients who have altered support systems. So it really brings to mind that to really try to give them even additional support. And then Janae, about that whole process of the transition and the thought process and the feeling like you have to reach the bar like that, like y'all got my mind thinking. Anyway, if folks wants to find out, if people who are listening to us right now, they're like, you know what? There's some dope sisters. I want to follow them. Okay, Kendra, where can they find you? How can they follow you? And don't forget,
I am everywhere.
That is the understatement of the start of the year.
I am everywhere. So if you're a social media gal or guy or neither, then you can find me.
All of the above.
And below and beside. Listen, I'm a social worker. I don't play. Everybody's included. You can find me on all of my socials. It is Pooh Smiles. Pooh like Winnie the Pooh, and smiles like good teeth. So Pooh Smiles. I do have a book on Amazon. So you can, if you just type in Kendra Sims on Amazon, KendraSins, you can find me. I'm reachable.
Yes, she is. And I will be posting that information below for her book also. Okay, Janae, where can they find you and your adorable daughter?
Yes, Lord. So literally as of February 1st, I launched my private practice therapy services. And so my Instagram handle is at For Love Counseling. And on Facebook, Janae Tierra. That's JaneeTierra. Yeah. So I'm excited for that journey.
You heard it here first, okay? The practice is open. The doors to the practice are open, okay? Congratulations. Say that name of the practice one more time.
Please, so I can put my application in.
Come on, come with me, girl. Let's team up.
I got some credentials and stuff. I could probably make
we could be the team. Come on, dynamic duo. I'm with it. It's For Love Counseling. So FOR, of course, love, LOVE, counseling. And that's the Instagram handle. And the website is www.forlovecounseling. www.forlovefoundation.com is the website.
Awesome.
It's live.
I am
it's definitely live. I'm on the website right now trying to
I am loving it. Congratulations. See, this is what we do. This is what we do. We just not here yip yapping.
It was a step of faith.
Getting the work done.
That's a whole nother conversation.
We are for real getting the work done. And I am always Dr. T, the hand behind the handle of healthybump.club. And as always, it's always fun to have you here on this platform, listening to us, taking notes, and commenting below. That's your hint. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. And when you're done there, hang out with us on Instagram. Go up in the stories. We'll be having a whole situation in the stories, okay? And when you're done there and you feel like you want to support us financially, go ahead and hit up our parent line at HBC Village. You'll find us on Instagram as well, and you'll find the link just below. And don't forget, we're partners with Apple Music. If you want to buy some Apple stuff, make sure you use our shopping link. Once again, we thank you for joining us, and don't forget to check out our other videos. We talk about a lot of stuff y'all want to know about, okay? And we love you guys for watching, and we'll see you in next episode.